it's not particularly high power because of you don't need a lot of energy, because most of the heat is kind of staying in the house, which is great. So you don't actually need to do a huge amount of extra heating. And often what you find in passive houses is, there's no boiler to speak of. There's maybe a hot water tank with an immersion heater that's getting powered by the solar panels. So that's great for your water. And often the only sort of heat source is maybe a low power heated towel rail in the bathroom, or there might be like a booster unit next to the actual MVHR unit, which is kind of saved for the really coldest days of the year. It very rarely needs to be turned on. So commonly what people do in these houses is they just kind of turn on the heated towel rail for an hour or so, and then that's enough. And that sort of, it's a bit of a delay. It kind of circulates through the whole house, but eventually it will warm up the house, and quite commonly that's enough. In combination with the heat that human bodies in the house are generating, and solar gain as well. So the sun coming in through the windows, suddenly stuff like that we don't really think about very much becomes a significant source of heat, because it's not escaping. It's the vast majority of it is being kept in the house. So suddenly that actually does make quite a big difference to the equation. And actually, one thing I forgot to show you there, you might see on this house here, there's a really huge sloping roof overhanging the walls there. And this is because in the colder months, when the sun is lower in the sky, it's providing that solar gain, that heat input through the windows. But then in the summertime, the sun is higher in the sky, and that's the point where you might get too much solar gain and overheat the house. But then you've got this big sloping roof, so then that acts as a shade in the summertime to stop too much solar gain from coming into the house. So it's very clever stuff, certainly. So I'll just give you a quick look at this. This is what some MVHR units look like. So it's this kind of the boxy bit here. This is actually an immersion tank. So that's probably being powered by the solar panels. So it's, they're not massive. They're a similar kind of size to a gas boiler. And they tend to be sort of tucked away in the cupboard. They're not particularly noisy. Yeah, they're pretty good, really. Yeah, so that's MVHR. So that brings us to the question of, is it actually worth it? Should we be saying that all new houses should be passive house? So if you look at it in terms of cost, it's not a great deal of extra cost for a new build. If you're designing it from the start to be a passive house, you're looking at maybe about a 10% extra cost. So it's not, it's not astronomical, but at the same time, you're going to get lower energy bills as well, because your heating costs are really, really small. And you're generating solar electricity, so you're probably going to recoup that after a few years. So in terms of cost, it's not really a deal breaker. I should say as well, it's not the only standard in town. Like it's not a case of passive house or nothing. So there's a kind of sibling standard which is called Enefit. That's more aimed at people wanting to retrofit their houses, existing houses, with insulation and make it sort of close to passive house standard. It's still a very high level, incredibly high. It's a lot of work to get it there. Probably a lot of people who are retrofitting wouldn't aim quite so high. There's the AECB, which is the Association of Environmentally Conscious Builders, and they have a whole training course on their website. They have their own standard, which again is still quite demanding. It's not a walk in the park. Or you can take the principle of these standards and sort of aim for that. That there's a certain amount of heating energy sort of required. So they often stipulate you can't go above so many kilowatts per square meter in terms of heat input. And there's standards for air tightness and that kind of thing. So you can kind of you can have a figure in mind for those factors without sort of going down the certification route. And as long as you're aiming for that kind of thing, then you can certainly get fairly close. So it's probably a personal preference thing as much as anything. In terms of what the government could do, I mean, they could say from now on in building regs that we want something very close to passive house without explicitly, you know, using the passive house standard, but they could certainly aim a lot higher than they are at the moment. So that would be a good starting point, really. But of course, new build is not all of the story, and indeed, there's this figure kind of being banded around that, you know, 80% of the homes that will exist in 2050 are already built, are already here today, and most of them are, you know, woefully under insulated and, you know, not up to the kind of standard that we need in order to meet our emissions targets. So we are going to have to retrofit existing homes, and, you know, it is more difficult, definitely, but you can apply the same principles. I wouldn't say that your average new home should be passive house retrofitted, but you could certainly, you know, you could aim for a high level. I mean, you could aim for Enefit if you wanted to. The main thing, the crucial thing, is that you follow the same fabric first principle. So you make sure you've got that continuity of insulation, make sure that you're minimizing thermal bridging, and you make sure that you sort of, you know, keeping your air tightness as high as possible as well. And, you know, we're still going to need heating sources in these houses. And like I said before about air source heat pumps, you know, they do need a sort of a reasonably well insulated house to start with. So for some people, you know, it could be a viable solution to do a pretty decent retrofit of insulation and combine that with a heat pump. So that's, you know, that is definitely a potential avenue there. And I should say as well, so these two pictures here, this is a retrofit in York. So there's a Victorian end terrace, and the architect who designed and indeed lives in this house is on the call tonight, but we'll talk a bit more about that later. I don't want to kind of put the spotlight on him too much because he's really here as a member of the audience, but yes, you can see he's done a very nice job on it anyway. Okay, so I think now I might hand over to Richard for this bit, because Richard wants to talk about an extra bit. So you happy to take over, Richard?
I am, yeah. So hopefully you can see my screen now, which looks exactly the same as Tom's screen. So yeah, I wanted to butt in here and just now. So I'm also a member of the YCE committee. I'm actually the secretary, and I my day job, however, is to work in another community energy organisation called Carbon Co-op, and we're doing some work here, and it ties in with this. And I just thought this would be an interesting angle as well to fill in. So Tom's been talking about how how we can tackle heating and how the various effects of different kinds of technologies. So we had some comments in the chat about this as well. But one of the things to draw out here is that if we are going to switch our heating demand to electricity, because at the moment 3/4 of household use comes from fossil fuels. So that's mostly the gas that we use to heat our houses. To a weak case for that, the domestic heat, but that's controversial. We can pick that up later, perhaps. But yes, the Committee for Climate Change said we need 90 million heat pumps then by 2050, and that little graph there from the Green Alliance shows you the kind of where we are today, how many gas boilers we're installing in the new houses we're building, as compared with the number of clean heating systems of all kinds. So the Green Alliance did the sums, and they said at this rate, it will take 1,500 years to get to the target that we need to be at by 2050. So that's just an idea of the scale of the problem we have ahead of us. One of the implications to this, obviously, is that there will be a bigger strain on the electricity grid, and a lot of people have highlighted this as an issue, that if you're adding to your electricity demand, so this is what typical daily demand looks like for a house through the day. So it's quite low overnight. It goes up in the morning. People get not having showers, having breakfast, turning the lights on, dip in the middle of the day, goes up again in the evening, that's the peak when people are, cooking and watching TV, arguing on Twitter, and all the kind of various things that we do in our spare time. And then it tails off again at night. And incidentally, anyone who's at the YCE AGM, this is going to have a ring of familiarity about it. So I apologise in advance for that. Anyhow, if we put heat into that, if we're actually going to be using the electricity grid to heat our houses as well, instead of the gas grid, then of course we need that heat at the same time as we are active in our houses, the morning and the evening. So actually you get increased irregularity, you get an increase in the peak demand where the grid comes under more stress at those times. But if we go through that process that Tom's just described about insulating our houses massively, then not only does that reduce the demand, but it also allows you to be a bit clever with it. And this is a nice side effect of taking all the measures that Tom has just been outlining. So a badly insulated house loses heat rapidly. I mean, that's such an obvious statement. It's almost an insult me saying it to you. But yes, I mean, your house, my house, not Phil's house, obviously, but most of our houses, I suspect, we're in a winter time where if we're in the evening, your heating is going to be cycling on, perhaps every hour. So you're going to keep pouring the heat into the house, and the heat just goes straight out again. But a well-insulated house, obviously, that heat is retained, and you get much less fluctuation, which means that you can actually use your house as a heat battery.
The chat, but yeah, please get signed up to that, and you can harass your MPs. You can sign petitions. There's all kinds of links here. We probably don't need to paste them all into that chat, but we'll put them in an email afterwards. There's all kinds of petitions going on. For example, there's a petition about VAT on retrofit, basically saying, why are we paying VAT on retrofit? That's a quick and easy way to stimulate the market, is to just drop the VAT. There's a whole bunch of consultations going on all the time. So Community Energy England have very helpfully got a page full of different consultations that are relevant, and there's ones about, so there's specifically ones about government departments consulting on a green recovery and what that might look like. So there's some relevant stuff on there. I would encourage you to go and look at that. Protests, if nothing else works, then maybe we need to protest. And obviously there's been the student climate and youth climate strikes that have been going on every month. In addition to that, so I just wanted to mention Extinction Rebellion York, who on Wednesday, they were out protesting, basically demanding that we build back better from the pandemic. And there's a whole kind of Build Back Better campaign that's involved with that. So they did a little demonstration in Westbank Park, which is very nice in York, if you know it. And they are going to keep banging that drum, both metaphorically and literally, because they do actually have musicians there. And yeah, they are going to. So they've got more stuff planned as well, to just keep on at the government about this green recovery, about building back better. Yeah, and tell your friends. We need to spread the word. At the moment, this is all very kind of niche stuff. It's definitely not mainstream, but it needs to be, absolutely needs to be. So the more people who know and understand, the better, quite frankly. Okay, I think that's enough like that. Yeah, and then if you do want to learn more about various things that we talked about, there's the Carbon Co-op, who we've mentioned already, doing all kinds of webinars. One of the biggest frustrations for me is that Carbon Co-op are all the way over in Manchester, which is not that far. But if you want to go to a lot of their meetings and demonstrations and things, then it can get quite tricky with travel. So again, silver linings at the moment, that all their stuff is online. They're doing loads of online courses and webinars and things, and it's great. There's some really knowledgeable people. They've been doing this for a long time. So do go and check out their stuff. Again, we'll put some links in an email afterwards. Oh yeah, there's the link in the chat for you there. The Green Building Store, who are based in Huddersfield, so they sell high performance windows and doors and that kind of thing. So if you are thinking about retrofit, then definitely go and talk to them, and they're very helpful, very friendly. They do consultation work as well. They do designs of new build and retrofits. They're just generally lovely people, and they've got the heart in the right place. And they do open days sometimes. I think they've just done a virtual open day, but hopefully at some point in the future you'll be able to go to their shop again and listen to them, talk about all this kind of stuff. And yeah, it really does. It blows me away, the level of knowledge that they have. So definitely have a look at them. We've got some stuff on our website as well. So there's a Warmer Homes York section on our website, where you've got some top tips on there about insulating your home and draft proofing and things like that. So do go and check that out. If you do live in York, then later in the year we'll be doing whole house assessments to see what kind of things need to be done in your house for retrofitting. We also have a thermal imaging camera, so we can find thermal leaks in your house. So that's it's been quite a popular service. That last winter actually, it's picked up some interesting things, but I think Ivana will probably talk more about that later. But anyway, if you're interested in any of those things, you can find out more about how to request it on the website. And the AECB, which I mentioned before, they have loads of material on their website. They have a course that you can go on. They have their own standard that's kind of similar to Passivhaus. So check them out as well. Okay, and I think that's just about it for this section. So do we want to go to questions? I think there's been some stuff coming in on the chat.
Yes.
Anything interesting so far?
So some I've been keeping an eye. There's been lots of good discussion going on. All sorts of people chipping in with comments and interesting stuff. There's not as many questions, but there was one, I think, although that's been answered, I think quite comprehensively, about why aren't all new build built as Passivhaus if there's only 10% extra cost. I think it's been quite comprehensively answered in the chat about yes, basically a huge building lobby not being keen on losing their profit. Seems to be the general sort of agreement. That's one of the biggest problems. I think there's a question about insulation for internal walls. Hillary has said that there's an interesting dilemma about it. She's used some wool insulation, but that's not load bearing. So I think extra tips for internal insulation. I've suggested wood fiber board, which is quite good at tempering moisture levels as well. But if anyone else has got any tips on what they've done.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't done any in my own house yet, so yeah, can't really comment on that. Don't know.
I'll say a few, but
Sorry?
Is that Mark?
yes,
Mark,
it is.
yeah.
Me, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
May or may not remember me. I was the first victim of YCE.
I remember you well.
Yeah. Now there we
the thermal
go.
imaging. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The draft busters were around my place last year. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've obviously had the service, had the thermal sessions, got the feedback, the pictures, bits and bats of advice. With everything going on and various other factors, obviously I haven't turned the house upside down within a few months, and now it's one of these show homes. But little bits and bats I've been involved in. I've sort of got into fitting insulation sticking strips using general purpose sealant, indoor and outdoor sealant on areas, cracks, gaps, etc. For those little drafts. So I mean, it is, every little helps, and it does feel satisfying. I think as you do it, so you don't have to sort of look at it and think, right, well, I haven't got sort of £15,000 on me to completely overhaul the entire thing. Therefore, I'll just do nothing, just give up. It shouldn't be about that at all. Just even a small budget, £30 can definitely make a difference, filling those little cracks, gaps, cutting those little drafts off. So I wouldn't. I would suggest to everyone to look at your own house space or business, whatever, and sort of be quite almost harsh with it and think, right, well, can I feel a draft there? Is there a bit of a crack there? I've kind of been blue tacking over, and just take the little steps to tackle it. I mean, the sort of the ceiling, if you you sort of go into any DIY store, and you sort of they just give you the tube and you get the ceiling going. It all looks quite bizarre at first, but you soon get into it, and before you know it, you sort of sealing every crack and gap you've ever had. So I mean, I'd recommend that as well. But yeah, just every little helps really. Light bulbs, your low energy light bulbs. I mean, that's not really heating, but it's it's still fun. Refitting the house. So yeah, I've been taking a lot of little steps that I like to think have made a difference.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. And obviously, yeah, like you say, whatever you can do is a good start, and it means that you're thinking about it and always looking for new opportunities to do something. So yeah, that's great. Just going back to the question about the internal walls. I know, so a lot of people for retrofit, they use Kingspan for the internal insulation, but does anyone know if that's load bearing? I don't know about the load bearing aspect of it. Phil's shaking his head. And Debbie. So we'll go with no.
It shouldn't need to be load bearing if the external wall's doing the load bearing, then whatever you slap on the inside of it, all that's got to do then is carry the internal finishes. So provided whatever you use has got the capacity to do that, and that's okay.
Cool.
Well, I'm just going to add on the load bearing thing, because I've put the wood wool insulation, which comes as a bat, which is lovely, feels great, but I know that I can't hang a picture on it. It's not that it isn't, it's all core drilled into the main wall, but I can't put a nail in it. So whoever has the house, kind of after me, will need to know that wall, you can't do that sort of thing on it. Whereas the other alternative I was given was to build a internal stud partition and then maybe use sheep's wool or something like that, which with a plasterboard finish or something like that, so that you can then use plasterboard things. But I was like, well, I kind of like the wood wool and the lime. I live in an old house, so it's already got lime plaster on the walls. So I just kind of went for another lime option, I suppose, and did lime plaster on the inside. You can build in picture rails. That's about the only thing that I wish I'd done. But anyway.
Excellent. So there's a question about single room MVHR as well. I think it largely depends on your use case. I think they're normally for bathrooms and kitchens, so it's a good alternative to just an extractor fan. Obviously, extractor fan is not sort of keeping the heat in, so it's good from that perspective. I've not heard anything about UK wind speeds being a problem. You have to make sure your wall isn't.
Read about it was about having it rather than having a whole house system, it was to have it in the bathroom and the kitchen, to have them in them. And then we found a few things that have said that the wind speed then makes it a negligible effect and you end up using the energy and it doesn't recover it back. But we also there's not a lot about them, we've found.
Okay, I've not particularly heard that, so yeah, I don't know really. I mean, they definitely get sold in the UK, so I can't imagine they're completely useless, but I guess you never know with these things. That might be a bit of an optimistic leap on my part. There's a question about the noise of heat pumps as well. So I think you can get quite quiet heat pumps these days. There are planning regulations to do with them, but as long as you keep them, a reasonable distance from neighbouring houses and not pointing straight towards them, I can't imagine it's a problem. But yeah, the modern heat pumps are pretty quiet, so I don't think there's a big issue with those.
Unless you're in a conservation area, of course, in which case
Yeah.
a world of trouble will fall upon you. But there are even solutions for that. If you're absolutely minted, you can get entirely internal heat pumps that only have little ducts, little vents, which can then be kind of discreetly capped on the outside of a building. So there are ways of doing it, but they are extremely expensive, those ones.
Right, okay. And I was going to talk about the...
Sorry, Debbie's got a hand up.
Yeah. Debbie, would you like to?
Debbie, would you like to come in? You're muted. And now you're not muted, but still inaudible.
We can't hear you.
No, Debbie, sorry, we can't hear you. Sorry, Debbie, I think you're going to have to put it in the chat.
Oh, hold on. Now you're on mute again.
That's all right.
Oh, there you go.
Hey.
My living IT bods got involved.
Hi, Mike.
Basically, on MVHR, we've done several retrofits over the last 20 years, and we've gone everything from a company that comes in and does the whole thing for you, right the way through to buying a kit off eBay and putting that in. All I'd say about the single room, as opposed to trying to put it into at least one, if you like, a wetter room, like a kitchen or a bathroom, and a drier room, like a sitting room, living room, something like that, is the beauty of it is you actually balance out, you can take the energy out of the bathroom, kitchen, and then you can get up to 90, I think one of ours does 90-something% of the energy recovery back into the other room. So if you can network it, and again, you can buy kits, you don't have to necessarily have someone come in and do it all, but if you can actually network it, the whole system will work far more efficiently. And I think the other thing that's quite good is you can buy HEPA filters to go in them. So if you either live in the middle of town, or if you've got a member of your family that's got asthma or something like that, it's actually a superb way of cleaning up the air. I'm a real fan of MVHR because out of all the things we did way back in the day in 2010 when we did our house, it was the thing that surprised us the most. We sort of did it because, oh well, you know, it's there on the list of things. But actually, it revolutionised the comfort of the rooms, having this sort of gentle, cool air rather than, you know, just opening windows or even worse, trickle vents, which you must have. You must have a trickle vent if you don't have an MVHR. But I would say to people, have a look and see if you can network a couple of rooms together. It will be worth it.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, I think that probably covers it for now. Shall we move on to Ivana's section?
Okay, can one of you share the slides?
Sure.
I think Richard might have to.
And yeah, while you're doing that, I'll just mention something I learned on a webinar recently, which was that you can actually get air source heat pumps that only run at about 20 decibels. I imagine that they are probably quite expensive ones, those. But one interesting fact was, it was a chap from London, and he's pointed out that also they need to be at least a meter away from a party wall, so from a neighboring property. So in terraced housing, that could be a major consideration to have. Not as much of an issue in the suburbs perhaps, but might be something you need to consider before putting one on, because then you might have it in the middle of your wall quite prominently. You might need to think about ways to cover it or something. So yes, there are interesting ones. And I think there's definitely webinars about heat pumps which are worth looking up. Okay, so I believe we were actually going to have a poll now, weren't we, Tom?
Oh yes.
Sorry, I'm relying on my beautiful assistants to do the work for me, and I'll just do the talking.
Yes.
Not
So,
too much, I promise, because the idea is that we get your input from this section. Okay, Paul, ready?
yes. So to start with, after what you've heard so far and whatever you were thinking before, we're just interested to see what your opinions are on retrofitting your own house. So if you could answer that, please. Getting the answers coming in thick and fast now. And I think we've just about got everyone. So I am going to, oh, we've got everyone again, 100% turnout, amazing. So there we go.
Right.
50% say yes. And some people have already started,
Terrific.
some people already finished.
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of expertise in this group, actually, by judging by the chat, and I'm hoping that we can make use of that. I'm just trying to grab that shot, but great. Okay,
Okay, can I
that
get
bodes
rid of
well.
that?
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
So if we can move on to the next slide. So I'll just tell you a bit about what we've been doing as a group. Tom sort of did a brief introduction earlier on, and he sort of stole my thunder a little bit by saying a few things, but this is sort of things that we have been kind of doing this year. So on the retrofitting side or saving energy side of things, we did manage to, after a bit of training for ourselves and having a go in our own homes, we managed to carry out 5 thermal imaging surveys before lockdown hit, and we had to stop for obvious reasons. And it's been really interesting kind of going around people's homes and sort of showing them where basically their houses are massively losing heat. I don't know how much people know about how thermal imaging cameras work, but basically they use infrared, I believe, to show you sort of the differences in temperatures, surface temperatures of different materials. And basically the colder the color, the bluer in this picture, the colder that surface is. So if you've got huge differences in the range between sort of warm and cold, that means that the surface is not it's not warm uniformly, and that means that you will experience probably quite a lot of discomfort in that room. And from the picture at the bottom, you can see this is a bungalow in New Earswick, which was actually quite recently refurbished, which unfortunately is really damning, because you can see that the loft above that room basically did not get any insulation whatsoever. Those blue squares or rectangles up there, that means there's missing insulation. So on the face of it, the room looks lovely, but it's definitely not toasty warm unless you put a lot of heat into it. And the thermal camera shows you these sort of things. It's going to show you thermal bridges. It's going to show you sort of wet spots in a house as well, damp and things like that. So it's a really useful tool to visualize how good or bad, in a lot of cases, our houses really are. So we lend the camera out, and we also offer a service where a few of our trained volunteers can go out with the camera and sort of help you interpret the pictures, because it's not always that simple. It's not always this straightforward to look at a picture and see, yeah, that's definitely insulation missing. It is best done sort of at the times of year when there's big differences in outside and inside temperatures. So right now, you wouldn't want to be going out doing it. In the United States, they often do it in the summer, because actually there they are looking out in air-conditioned houses. You can use it the other way around. You can be looking at actually hot air entering your house. But we're probably not quite there yet here. So we'll wait and restart the sort of thermal imaging surveys until late autumn again. But if you're interested, we can help you look at a house with new eyes. And that sort of links to a little video. We've done a few sort of guided by Andy Walker, or rather following Andy Walker, who's an insulation practitioner, I guess. He's a really good installer. We've been sort of going around and watching him deliver house assessments, and one of them we actually filmed because he gave a really good explanation of what U values are. And if you don't know what U values are, it's basically a U value of a material tells you how thermally resistant or conductive, whichever way you want to look at it, that material is. So it tells you basically whether it's a good insulator or not, whether you will be warm standing next to it or whether you'll be shaking like a leaf in the wind. And the video, in it, he explains rather nicely why U values are really important to improve, and basically the lower the U value, the better. So you want to aim for the lowest values. So I recommend having a look at that rather than me trying to explain it very inefficiently here. So that's two things sort of on the retrofitting and sort of saving energy side. If we move on to the next slide. Linked to that, we also organized 2 draft proofing workshops. The first one was in conjunction, or rather delivered by Carbon Co-op's Anika, who trained I think 6 or 7 of us so that we can actually deliver those workshops ourselves. And the first one was before the lockdown, so very well attended, and we had it was really nice being able to actually look at the different materials and different bits of things and kit that you can see in the lower picture of what can be done, what can be used to draft proof a house, because of course reducing drafts means it may not mean that you will actually save energy, because unless you, after reducing the drafts, if you don't then turn your heating down, you're not necessarily going to save energy, but it definitely makes you a lot more comfortable, and that means you are less likely to want to crank up the heating. So it's a really good way to get more comfortable, as Mark explained what he's done, and we're definitely keen to deliver more workshops like that. So if you're interested, please do sign up to our updates and let us know. And we're looking at delivering other workshops as well, basically skilling up, because I think, as has been mentioned quite a bit, we really need people to know about these things. We need people to talk about it, because retrofitting is still seen as something that weird people do probably, and we need to make it the new normal. And draft proofing is a really good sort of entry level thing that almost anyone can do, but you do need to be a bit careful. You need to make sure that you do keep fresh air coming into the house, that you don't plug every hole without making sure that you don't have adequate fresh air supply. So, you know, it's worth going on a workshop is all I'm saying. And behind the scenes, we've also been, because of course we can't do it all ourselves, so we're trying to approach local builders, because we realize that not everyone is keen on DIY, not everyone is keen to do things for themselves or able to do that. So we need reliable and trusted contractors who can go and actually do these things. So we're approaching local builders to try and establish a network of our contractors. We haven't got very far yet, I must say. It is proving rather difficult to find people that we can reliably recommend. If you know any local ones, then please do let us know. If there's anyone you can recommend that we could work with, that would be brilliant. We do aim to one day be able to offer a similar service to the Carbon Co-ops, so that basically people can come to us, we can recommend contractors, we can provide assessments for a house, and basically take people on a journey to make sure that you can actually go, okay, I want to change my house, I want to upgrade it, and go all the way to actually making it happen, because a lot of people get stuck when they can't find someone to do the work. But we haven't forgotten about our roots of wanting to actually generate energy as well. So we are still looking at opportunities for putting solar on roofs in New York. We had what seemed like a very promising scoping project with a local charity. Sadly, that's sort of been put on hold, but maybe it will get picked up again. We definitely haven't given up. So if you know of any groups with large roofs that will be there for at least another 20 or 25 years, then please let us know. And we've also been working with a resonance group on sorry, I just spotted inevitably someone has suggested York Minster in the chat. Yes, we have thought about that a lot, and we although it is an eco congregation, York Minster, putting solar panels on may be a step too far for them, I suspect, but you never know, maybe one day. So on a slightly smaller scale, we've been advising a resonance group on bulk buying of solar panels, so that if we can't get them on a big roof, we can see if we can help people actually get together and get a discount on getting solar panels. And that's ticking along nicely, and we're hopeful that one day we'll be able to reveal. And we're very keen to be helping others. So again, if you're interested, do get in touch. And certainly we've been using the time. We haven't sort of forgotten about community energy during the pandemic at all. We're learning fast from the different webinars and workshops and Community Energy Fortnight. I think we've all been to 4 workshops a week or something. So we're busy upskilling ourselves, and we're keen to upskill other people too. And because we need basically energy champions, or whatever you want to call them. We need people to talk about energy, because lots of people actually don't. They don't necessarily even know what their bills are, what they mean. I've recently discovered that for a lot of people, abandoning energy bills can be something they don't really know how to interpret. It's, for some reason, it's an issue that not many people talk about. So even talking to family and friends is a great start to help us achieve what we want to do in York. So I think I'll stop gabbling and actually hand over to you, because this is the bit where we hope to get some ideas from you. So we can move on to the next slide. That's where the questions were. I haven't trained them well, have I? So just to sort of start us off, rather than kind of to try and kind of plunge you in the deep end. So what, there's a lot that we could be doing as a group, and we're sort of working out what would be a good focus. I think right now, definitely sort of pushing for a green recovery in whatever way we can, is be it through a Green New Deal or whichever way we choose, it needs to happen. So I think putting the pressure on is certainly a good way to do it. I've put in a picture of the London Community Energy Fund as a bit of a, have people heard about it, just out of interest? So basically the Mayor of London, when I believe it was the Urban Community Energy Fund, or Community Energy Urban Fund, which was government's funding, when that closed, Mayor of London basically decided to set up his own. And it's a fund that has grown. I think now there's about £500,000 in it. And they have funded, I believe, 48 projects across London, clocking up something like 5 megawatt peak hour of solar panels, but there's other energy related projects as well, from I think some retrofitting and sort of fuel poverty advice and things like that. So it's a brilliant way to basically help groups, and it's mostly been to spend on feasibility studies and helping groups to actually get off the ground, because often the hardest bit is actually making the start, and this fund has been instrumental in doing that. So one question I could throw out there, well, what about York Community Energy Fund? Is there a way we can start one for York? Is there a way that, I don't know, we can push on the council or find a way, I don't know, some sort of a carbon levy? Just throwing it out there as one idea. So what would be your top 3 priorities for green recovery in the housing sector that we can all ask our MPs to push for? So next week, when you make a cup of tea to have with your MP, what would you be asking them for? What is your personal priority at home or in your community? And how can we help you to achieve that? So those are, pick whichever you like, or answer all 3. That would be brilliant. And yeah, let's have a bit of a discussion. I think we've still got time, so
Okay, so I think we've got Alice.
Yeah, I think like one of the biggest things that me and my partner have been talking about pushing for is either grants for people to retrofit their own homes or to get people to do it, although we know that's difficult. But there's just nothing really available. Like, we want to do it, but it's still quite expensive to do it. And it's difficult when you're having to like move all of your things from place to place in your house. So I think grants for retrofitting is something that we find really would be really important. It seems like there's not really a lot of grants for sustainability available at the moment.
That's certainly true, yes. One thing we didn't mention, which I was hoping we would, is because it wasn't an activity we did this year, but last year, the housewarming party, I don't know if Ivana might want to say something about that, because we did have big plans to carry on doing them this year. And in fact, we do have a bit of a pipeline, really, of them. So Ivana, do you want to explain what they are, Ivana?
Yes, so yeah, I mean, you could have done it yourself, but yes, so basically we invited, again, it was with Andy Walker from Shore Insulation, and we basically invited a bunch of strangers to our house and insulated a floor in the house. And by doing it as a workshop, it meant that people could have a go at the different tasks involved in basically ripping up a floor and insulating it underneath, making sure that it's done well in a way that does not compromise the floor underneath, that, you know, it is done really well. So it basically, people had a go, and we've got a lovely floor. It took a bit more going than we had anticipated, but it's worked really well. So we definitely want to do more of those, but we do need to make sure we can do it safely when it is safe to do so. But it is a good way to learn how to insulate a part of a house under the guidance of someone who knows what they're doing, and it's a really good cost efficient way of doing it as well. It's because you've got the labor there, and we cooked a meal, and it was a good day. We happened to have a lovely day for it as well, so it was we had a fire in the evening, and a drink or two, so they are really good fun. So we hope to do more of those.
I can just add as well, they are great fun, but they also shouldn't be a 100% replacement for the government occasionally providing some money. Yeah, but they are great. But yeah, I think that would be one of my big priorities, would be to try and get some of this money to appear, really, especially since they've allegedly pledged 9.2 billion. Let's start there and see if we can get that from them for a start.
Debbie?
Yeah. Oh, yes, it will work. I think you say the top 3 priorities. I'm absolutely passionate about getting the order right. Number 1 is use less energy. And I think basically if we're sending one message out with a single voice, it is to help people to reduce the amount of heat that they waste through. Just like you said, your excellent work with the heat sensitive camera, etc. So some of the things that we might be able to get your council to do or something like that is, I don't think there's any excuse nowadays for not surveying and insulating as an absolute minimum everybody's attic, if they have an attic, or I mean, that to me is 101. I know a fair amount of it got done during the sort of greenwash times when British Gas and everybody was giving the stuff away, but there's still a lot of people, especially in rented accommodation, who do not have something as fundamental as that. So that would be my number 1 priority, which is to assess where people have not even the basic humanitarian levels of insulation in their lofts, and sort that, because it's a relatively easy one. it's something that either people can do themselves, or if they can't do it themselves, it's something that isn't a very high level of training to do. But that would be mine, because I think once we start putting, numbers 1 through 19, then number 1, which might be the most important, gets diluted. But I'm not suggesting we don't have other ideas, but I'm absolutely passionate about number 1 priority is use less energy. And then you decide of the energy you require, how do you raise that energy? Because you're already using less of it. So you're already on the way, as it were. Anyway, I made my point, thank you.
Excellent point, thank you.
In the chat, we've got John Cossum saying that he can afford to externally insulate his homes, looking for advice on that, plus MVHR, who to ask. Green building install would probably be a good start, I guess. Especially for the MVHR, they have a MVHR design service. So they really do have a comprehensive service from start to finish. So, and it can be quite fiddly, and you have to make sure. Well, it depends how much you care, but it can be issues with sound traveling, like through the ducting and all that kind of stuff. So they can design it in a way that avoids all that. So they've really got all the knowledge there. That would be a good starting point.
You can also do a energy survey, energy assessment of your house, which a number of YCE members have done. There are a couple of people who will provide these. I think we have one person who we have mentioned a few times, Andy Walker, who does this. I don't know if he's looking for more work, but there are people like that. So what you'll do there is someone will actually look at your house and will say, okay, well, here are the places where you're likely to be losing heat, and here's what you could do about it. And you can draw up a sort of a kind of a plan, an outline plan for tackling things in a particular order. And then depending on how much you want to be involved, well, because how you tackle these things is also very down to you as a homeowner. It's some people will want to be very deeply involved and will be happy about it lasting a long time. Other people will want it to be short and professionals to take care of it. It's that whole sort of balance of speed, quality, and expense. So there's so I would recommend something like that. I don't know if we know if Andy Walker or any people alternatives to that are currently looking for work. I think with the coronavirus situation, I think you might have to sit tight for a while yet. I don't know.
Eric Parks, who's another Passivhaus architect, he also does surveys, assessments, and he's in Malton. Whether he's, don't know what his situation is at the moment, but it's another local possibility.
Sorry.
I was just going to say a slight issue there. He's relocating to Edinburgh. Yeah.
Oh, get in quick.
Yeah, he is going to keep doing work with existing clients. So yeah, if you can become an existing client anytime soon, then he will carry on with you. But I suspect he'll be sort of phasing that out.
Okay. Phil, might you know? Oh no, Phil has left, hasn't he? I just wonder because I've got a feeling there was someone else locally. Okay, we need to do some research, but this is one area that also is lacking, because I think there are quite a lot of people who can do assessments in terms of energy performance certificates, but they are not always very good. They don't necessarily tell you the true state of the house because they are a desktop study. So a lot of the certificates might not necessarily be with the paper they're written on, depending on who the assessor is. They don't have as much in-depth training as would be desirable. So this is one area that we're looking at to find more people who have enough experience. We are learning as a group, we are learning along the way with Andy and others, but we're not quite at the stage yet where we could confidently go in, and we can go around with a thermal imaging camera. That's relatively simple, but actually being able to look at walls and ceilings and kind of have a definitive answer for what's best to do, we're not quite there yet. So we could do with a couple more assessors who have that experience. So if you know any, then please let us know.
And we've got Adam saying in the chat as well, if you've got a few thousand to spend on retrofits, it's worthwhile approaching an architect or home energy assessor who's experienced in retrofits to do a whole house plan, ideally using a thermal model like full SAP or PHP, so that's the Passivhaus planning system. Yeah, I suppose it's the difference, isn't it, between I need to do a whole retrofit project, you know, proper, you know, serious business, or I just need to, you know, improve the insulation of my house a bit. I haven't necessarily got thousands and thousands to spend. So.
A good assessor will help you through that anyway. That is pretty much what I was trying to say, but more pithily put. Yeah, there is a definitely. I mean, this is a. I mean, there's going to be a growing demand for people with these skills, and I think there's. We're very keen to. We are actively trying to make the acquaintance of more people who can do these things. Across in Manchester, Carbon Co-op are building up a sort of a cohort of trained retrofit coordinators and assessors. But over here, there isn't any similar program to that, and that's another good ask you could make to the government, is that we need that kind of project to be sort of set up everywhere, because where there is an active and proactive local authority or community energy group, then those things are happening, and in a lot of places they aren't.
Anyone else got any burning issues or suggestions to do with this? So Adam's saying in the chat, so AECB have a directory on their website of building professionals, many of whom have a wealth of experience in retrofit. That is true. Forgot to mention that earlier. Yes, you might be able to find someone on the AECB website. Definitely a good place to look.
Any other sort of asks for us as a group?
When you said you were sort of, you know, wanting people to get in touch about the whole economies of scale solar panels, was that as simple as saying yes, you'd be potentially interested?
No, this is more about a specific residence group. So this is about a location-based project with a residents association in a particular area of York, who have basically you know, they're putting together a bulk buying scheme for people in that area. And if you haven't heard about it, then you aren't in that area, I'm afraid. But it is, I mean, depending on how well it works, then it is a model that might be able to go again for other groups. But people have done these across the country. There's a lot of these projects have happened before. Some of them, it is just a case of just bulk buying a contractor, you know, just stick solar panels on the roof of all the houses, just pay for it all at once, and you save a lot of money because you do a bulk buy of the silicon. You know, you can do all the deliveries, and if you've got a sort of a bit of compound of space that you can use, then you can save a lot of money with transport and storage and so on. But other people have done it where it's actually much more ambitious, and they not only install the panels, but they also install some kind of collective control system, smart systems as well. People are doing those as well. That's not something we're doing here locally, but these projects are around, and so it's very good to have something like that in York. And if it does, if it's a success, then yeah, then you'll hear about it. I mean, it's looking good. So.
We've got another comment in the chat saying procurement is always best when negotiated by economies of scale. Is the supplier doing installations or just supplying the panels?
Yeah, supplier's doing installation. Yeah, we're contracting for the whole job. Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to move on?
I think we should.
Got any more? Okay. Cool. So there is another slide at the end. We can have a look. Okay, so this is just our standard like and subscribe kind of slide. Please do have a look at the website. And I would say as well, so normally when we have a physical meeting, we have a little sign up sheet at the front and we have a little donations tin. So if you are feeling inspired and you're not already a member, please have a look on the website. You can sign up. If if you are based in York, then we'd love to have you as a member. And there is the donate button on the website as well, and we are not fussy about whether you live in York or not. If you want to give us your money, that's absolutely fine. We will send out a load of links in an email through Eventbrite at the end of this, covering all of the slides. I think we'll probably send the slides as well. We did try to record the session, but I think we missed a bit at the start, and then I lost internet for a good few minutes. So I think we're recording the end bit. So it's going to be a bit. It's not going to be the best recording in the world. So we'll see if there's something worth putting on YouTube. But we'll let you know. And I would just say thank you so much for giving up your Friday evening and probably all tired from the hot day and things. So do appreciate you coming, and it means a lot to us that people have made the effort. And please do go and tell your friends, and let's get a bit of a conversation going about it, because the climate emergency has not stopped. It's not it's not even been put on hold. It's it's still there. It's still raging on, and it's just going to get worse. So we really need to tackle this head on now. So it's great that you're all here to help us do that. So thank you very much. I don't know if Ivana and Rich wanted to say anything extra.
Just that normally we'd also have some cake and tea and a drink, and it's particularly galling not to be able to go to the pub just yet, but hopefully next time.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you all in the flesh sometime before too long.
Yeah, so brilliant. Thank you very much, guys, and see you next time.
Yes, thank you for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.